All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Van Coolen, can you read our mission statement?
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion or changes? Not, I'll call for the vote. The agenda is approved. Tiger Spotlight. Today we're going to recognize Karen Van Coolen. On behalf of the Marshall School Board, we'd like to take a minute to thank Karen for her time served on the school board. Karen began serving as a school board representative in 2009. In nearly 10 years, Karen has completed 195 hours of school board training and has served as a strong advocate for our district and students. Karen, thank you for your many years of service as a school board member. We have accomplished great things in your 10 years on the board. And also I'd like to thank you on behalf of the board for just your community involvement in everything that you've done, from SMSU to your past work with the Chamber and now with Prairie Home Hospice. You're a great asset to this town, so thank you.
Is that a tear?
No. Remember, I'm not a crier. Well, I think everyone should have to have the picture with me, shouldn't they? Can't everyone be in the picture?
You're front and center.
Absolutely. Come on up. Oh, everyone needs to go for this one.
I don't know, shy.
There you go.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much. But I need to
Let's balance it out.
This one has to go.
Darcy?
Should we make 2 rows? So, Karen, Matt, come forward.
Oh.
Bill and Aaron, Scott.
There we go.
Lisa, stand by Karen, Bill Colter, and
You still have my number.
Next item is our public forum. Is there anybody from the public would like to approach the board? If not, we'll move on to our presentation. Mrs. Chandler and Mrs. Love.
Thanks for being here today, ladies, and talking a little bit about some things going on at Parkside.
All right, well, thanks for having us. We are here to share a little bit with you about our social emotional learning program at Parkside. It looks a little different today than it did several years ago. And so just to talk a little bit about the history of that, we always have known that our students, when they're in school, we're going to teach them the academics. And so we're going to teach them reading, we're going to teach them writing, we're going to teach them math, social studies, science. And of course, the other piece of that is the social emotional learning. And so really that is one of the key components of a successful learning environment is that classroom management piece, because we really have to be able to help students regulate their behavior in order for them to be successful at school. And so that's changed over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And so I want you just to think back a little bit to when you were in school, or even just 20 years ago. Well, maybe that's when you were in school, I don't know. But just think back a little bit to about 20 years ago or so when you wanted to watch your favorite show. How did you watch your favorite show? You had to wait. You had to wait till it came on. And then you had to sit through all of the commercials. And then when it came to the end of the show, you didn't get to know what happened next. You had to wait till it came on again. And so I always think about my grandma watching her soap operas. I mean, she was a fanatic. Every single day, we had to make sure we watched Days of Our Lives. And so she was very disciplined. She knew when it came on. She knew that she wouldn't get to know what happened to whomever it was until the next episode, and so on. So you think about that. You also think about another example of that would be going to church with your family or going on a car ride with your family. How did you entertain yourself? Did you have a phone? Did you have a video? Did you have any of those things? No, you had to find ways to entertain yourself, and you also had to self-regulate yourself. You couldn't, be up running around. You had to find ways to entertain yourself and how to keep yourself under control so that you could be in church with your family and not get in trouble, or be in a car for a very long time without having that self-gratification continuously. And so we've really seen that change over the last 10 years even. Our children, that self-regulation piece that previously was taught by society is no longer there. In addition to that, there is a lot of other factors that are make it difficult for our students to manage their own behavior. And so because of those changes, we still have the same demands. We still ask them to come to school. They have to pay attention. They have to focus. But in addition to not having some of those society things that are already built in, we also have things like mental health issues that have been on the rise. We have ACEs. We have the rise of attention deficit disorders and ASD and executive function disorders, and even health and nutrition, and all of those things are factors that have really rewired how our students think and behave, and really caused us to really think about how we provide those services at school. And so it isn't just the same as it always used to be, but rather we have to really look at that and say, how can we be proactive rather than reactive? So we previously were very good at being reactive. We have a school counselor, so when a student had some behavior issues or they had some social emotional issues, we would send them to the counselor. They would get what they needed. They would go back to class. Life would go on. But because of all of those factors that we talked about previously, we're finding that more and more students need to build that muscle of self-regulation. They need to build that skill of self-regulation. So it's no longer just a matter of a few students needing that, but now it's a matter of all of our students needing to learn how to self-regulate their behavior and how to address some of those things when it gets hard. How do they persevere? How do they push through those things? And so, that's what we noticed. There was a gap in our programming, is that we were very reactive, and so we really wanted to figure out how we could be proactive. And so this is the position that we created. It's the social emotional learning teacher. Currently Gail is serving in that position, and I will let her share with you a little bit about what her role is and what that looks like. But before we get there, I just want to kind of show you the structure. So we have Greater Minnesota, our school counselor, and our social skills teacher, which is again Gail, who is in our building. And then you can kind of see what each of those groups do for students. And of course, there's a lot of collaboration and overlap there, but that's what that current structure looks like. And so tonight, we're here to mainly look at that social skills teacher and what that position looks like. So with that, I'm gonna let Gail share with you what her role is and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Hi, everybody. I am lucky enough to go into all 26 classrooms twice a month. And so 52 classrooms a month, I see these students, and I get to have the opportunity to teach them those foundational skills, the skills that everybody needs. Usually, once I go into the classroom, it's a more of a generalized time with the students, just on working on social skills, because everybody needs a reminder, even if they already know it. And so I really get to talk about social skills. And what we do is all students get the PBIS foundation, but they also get the whole body listening and the zones of regulation, which I'll kind of go into in just a minute. In the small group, we do a lot of SMART. And I know you guys have already heard about SMART, but I'll give you a little overview of that as well. And then social skills groups are huge. It's that small group when people aren't getting along. It's that small group, I can't behave on the bus. It's the small group, just friendship things or how to act at recess. And then because of my position, I'm able to go out to recess and help those students either role model it or just sit on the bench with them and talk to them about, is what that student doing right or wrong? Why would you think so? Would you want somebody treating you that way? Why or why not? And really just that one-on-one time. Along with one-on-one kids, we do have check-in, check-out systems where they come and see me in the morning. We go over their daily goals, and then in the afternoon they bring their paperwork back to me, and usually it's checked off every class period as to how their day is going. That way we can kind of see the trends, where they're doing well, where they're not doing well. Maybe they have problems usually at recess, maybe it's usually like in Phy Ed class, and then we can talk about really what are those triggers that are getting you into some trouble, and how can we work around those things? How can we make some modifications to help you be more successful? To start off the year, we went over a lot of Tiger Pride. There were some beautiful posters put all around the school that were designed just this year. They're colorful. They get the kids' attention. They're kind of everywhere, so that we're always reminding those students what we expect of them. We can't expect these things if they don't know what they are. So we want them to be everywhere, always a great reminder. And then we had whole classrooms do what we called the PBIS Passport. Students were first taught by the classroom teacher, then it was reviewed, and then they did take a Kahoot quiz on it, and when they were done, they got a Tiger Paw sticker, just knowing that they had kind of mastered that skill. Once all of the sections were mastered, then the tiger came in, took a picture with the students, gave out a pencil, and then that picture was put on there. But all the teachers are leaving them up just as kind of a reminder. You know, we've learned this. If we need to go back over it, we can always do that. You know, we oftentimes see them stopped in the hallway. Are we following these rules right now? Let's go over them one more time. So it's really been helpful that way. The zones of regulation. These are great because it's broken down into 4 different colors that the students can easily understand. Oftentimes, especially with kindergarten and first grade, they can't say, I'm angry or I'm sad. But if they can fit it into one of these colors, all they have to do is give us a color. So I went in and taught the whole school about these 4 different zones, and then also taught them about, if you're in this zone, do you want to stay there or do you want to change it? If you're wanting to change it, which is your choice as long as you're under control, how are we going to get there? What are some things we can do right here in the classroom to get you to a better place?
And I'm just going to add to in this regard, it is very interesting to see how many students have trouble identifying their feelings to say, I'm angry, I'm sad, but then also what their toolkit is to get to the other zone where they can be productive. And here's what I always find the most interesting is that when I say, is it okay to be angry? Is it okay to be in the red zone? A lot of times they'll say no. And it's like, yeah, everybody is in the red zone sometimes, but you have to be in control, just as Ms. Chandler said. It's okay to be in the red zone, but you have to be in control of your body. And then we need to work on how can we get to another zone that's going to be more productive in this while you're at school or whatever it might be. But everybody gets mad, and I think that that's hard for kids to understand because we tell them, you know, don't be mad, don't be sad, but you can be those things. It's okay to be mad, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be any of those things, but to know that you are and also be in control of your body is what's really important.
And the last part of zones of regulation is knowing what size is the problem. You know, that goes into, does the reaction fit the size of the problem? Are we maybe overreacting? Or is that really the size of the reaction that you should be getting? And that helps you go back to, where am I and do I want to change that? If we're in the red zone and we think it's a huge problem, how can we help you come down? If you think it's a tiny problem, do we really need to go and tattletale and tell the teacher every time your pencil breaks? We're trying to help everybody here. So just what size is the problem and how can we fix that problem? And then we went into whole body listening, just trying to help everybody regulate in the classroom. Again, what are the expectations and how can we help you to be more successful? And then something we've started new this year, well, we did touch on it a little bit last year, but we're really trying to use SMART as much as we can. And that's stimulating maturity through accelerated readiness training. And that's really going back to the core of the body, trying to develop or redevelop that brain structure and the core body and how we function every day, and just being able to control ourselves in the classroom, using both sides of the brain and just kind of knowing how we're feeling and what we need.
Okay. And so a little bit about the history of this position specifically. We started in 2016-17, and Deanne Reese was originally in this position. And that year is where we really started to develop the curriculum and identify what our needs were, what we wanted it to look like, some of that trial and error, and looking at the scheduling, how we could best meet the needs of the students and set that up. The next year, 2017-18, I should go back to, in 2016-17, we also became aware of a grant that was available, a Support Our Students grant. And so I did apply for that, and we did receive that grant, and it currently pays for, it's a graduating grant where the first year they pay so much, the second year it's a little bit less, but it's a matching grant. So it doesn't cover the whole position, but it certainly has helped with some of the expense of the position. So that was in 2016-17, and then 17-18 was Brittany Majusek, and that's where we had already selected then our zones of regulation. We had started quite a bit with SMART, probably in the middle of the year, I would guess, last year. The whole body listening, and then again, just starting to refine those schedules and really solidify those programs as the ones that we wanted to use to help teach those skills for our students to be successful in the classroom. And then this year, Gail is here, and again, focusing on those zones of regulation, our SMART curriculum, as well as our whole body listening and our Tiger Pride. So I feel like, you know, this position has really helped us be really clear and consistent throughout the whole school. It really gives us a foundation for everyone to have similar language and how we interact with students and how we talk with students. Everyone knows how to have a conversation with a student about, are you know, what zone are you in, and trying to help them get there. When you come to any of our assemblies, when we talk about whole body listening, all you have to do is count to 3 and they'll be in their whole body listening position. And so it really gives everyone a you know, solid foundation to be successful. And of course, there's always those that need a little more support, but that's why we have our school counselor, that's why we have Greater Minnesota, and even some of those small groups that Gail is able to help with. So I think it's been a great addition. We have seen, we're keeping pretty good track of our behavior. We've really refined that system as well so that we can start to really track that. So that's kind of some of the things moving forward. We want to start to evaluate some of these programs to see how well the zones of regulation is working, how well are our teachers able to utilize that within the classroom, doing class surveys to the teachers to ask them what their thoughts are. So those are kind of some of the next steps moving forward is, you know, looking at those programs, seeing how we can refine them and make them better, but then also looking at some of those things like supporting and training staff so that they're more familiar with some of those same things as well. So any questions?
You're in every classroom twice a month?
Yes, sir.
How many minutes are you each time?
First and second grade, at least 30. I try to keep it between 30 and 35 just so that they know, so that they can plan better. Kindergarten, usually it's 15 to 20, just because their attention span is a little smaller.
Teachers stay in the room during that time?
Yes, sir.
Good. That's part of the training
Yes.
process.
Yeah. They hear the same thing everybody else does.
You do the small groups at the same time, or is that
No, sir. Those would be
different
pulled separately.
separately?
We like to teach the whole classroom, the whole lesson, and then if somebody needs a little extra encouragement, we get them small group, and then they can practice it one-on-one or in the small group if they continue to have problems.
Do you have kids coming to you now pretty regularly saying, can I talk to you?
Most of the time,
Which is good.
yes.
So is there a similar program in West Side, so when they leave second grade, they don't all of a sudden have something completely new? Is there a nice transition program?
There will be. We're working on that. Heather Bigler and I are PLC coaches together, and so the transition for next year, we're actually looking at 2 years from now, just because I'd like to give it one whole year and then work on my 3-year plan, and then kind of transition her into it. That way, all of the students have had it for one full year by the time they get to her.
Makes sense.
I
Thank
had
you for
to-
your leadership with that.
Absolutely.
I had to kind of smile when I read through your whole body listening thing, because I realized that I was guilty of that. Just a short story, when my oldest was like 5 or 6, and it seemed to happen on Sunday afternoons, she would come in and say, "Dad, listen to me with your eyes." So I realized that's what it was called, whole body listening.
Yes. I've
Yeah.
always liked her.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions?
Find the staff being receptive?
Yes.
Very, especially to
Any
the smart.
questions?
Yes.
Good.
What can we do in our classroom? This is what we would like to see better utilized. How can we do that? How can we integrate this into our rooms?
And really, that's where the second half of the year, the first half of the year is, going through the PBIS and the zones of regulation and the whole body listening. But then the second half can be a little, or is a little bit more prescriptive for each classroom. So if your classroom, they're struggling with friendships, then Gail can go in and do a whole class lesson on that, and then some pull-out if necessary, or whatever it is that whole class might be needing.
When we bring new teachers on board, that first 2 or 3 days, is this part and parcel of their 3 days with us initially?
I'm not sure.
Or is a mentor assisting with
I
this?
always cover that when I have them with me in my building. And then we do have like a little PBIS manual that has a lot of the same information. And that's kind of one of our things moving forward as well, as far as training and supporting staff, looking at doing some little mini workshops with them, tips of the week, follow-up lessons, and then just more training and support for them too. But that's a good question, thank you.
Well, it needs sustainability, and when you have turnover in staff, what are you going to do to bring them on board? That's
Yep.
my concern.
Yep, absolutely. Yep,
I think it's an excellent program.
thank you.
Been there, done that. That need was there. Thank goodness we have your expertise on board.
Well, thank you.
I'm thankful too.
I like the way you explained it. Kind of put the whole analogies together. That makes a lot more sense. I'm thinking, geez, can't these kids just sit still?
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
the analogy. It makes a lot more sense now.
It
Yeah,
completes the
definitely
whole
changed.
child piece.
For sure.
thanks, ladies.
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicely done, Gail.
Next item is the consent agenda. You need a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? If not, I'll call for the vote. That is approved. Next item is approval of the bills for November, December. Mr. Karen.
Nothing really special, just falls in line with last month, actually a little lower than last month, falls in line with last year. So we just ask for the approval of the $2,013,819.06.
So move.
Thanks, Bill.
Second.
Thanks, Bill. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. Oh, just a minute. I messed up. What happens when there's two bills? Okay, now you can vote.
2 bills approving to pay the bills.
Information on the treasurer's report. You want to add anything? Then
No, everything, if you look at the 4 years, everything looks good. Capital outlay may stick out a little bit because it's in the negative, but I think we've talked about this before. Capital outlay we want to spend earlier in the year because it makes more sense to be able to use during the year, and then the revenue will just catch up to that.
Thanks, Dion. Board reports or
This is a nice piece, Deanne, thank you.
anybody have any reports or updates?
I attended the first session at the MSBA, was it 2 weeks ago now, I think? Scott was one of the presenters there. Found it to be really helpful, very enlightening, and looking forward to the second one already.
Thanks, Aaron.
Feeling pretty green, aren't you?
Very green.
Our next item is a Board of Directors ballot. You all should have one. Tricia handed out. Major Moss from Westbrook Walnut Grove is the only one running from our area. So we just need to vote and turn these back into you. Is that right? Okay. Turn those into Tricia after the meeting. Administrators report. Mr. Munson.
Yeah, I'll go through a few things from each of the reports that you should have in ESB. In my report, I shared that legislative platforms for different organizations are starting to come out with the start of the legislative session, I think on January 8th, if I'm not mistaken. So I did put the MSBA platform in my report, and then also I went through a variety of sort of review of activities that have happened or taken place leading up to the long-range facilities plan recommendation that you have on the agenda tonight. In Tiffany's report, she shared that registration for ECFE classes is open. I think that opened last week, and those classes start in January and run through May. And she also shared some information about the work that's happening relative to formative assessments and social studies and science in the professional learning communities in early childhood. Darcy, who was just here, shared information about the last Tiger Pride celebration, which the SMSU women's basketball team helped the students celebrate. And also in November, there were 34 education majors from SMSU who essentially took over 18 classrooms at Parkside and spent a couple days implementing and practicing what they've been learning for a number of years, and that's really a valuable partnership that's been in place for a number of years. In Jim's report, he shared information that the Pride in the Tiger Foundation provided support so that fourth grade had an opportunity to participate excuse me, in the Hour of Code. I think that also was last week or the week before. And then on December 6th, there were 38 parents and 15 students who attended a Title Family Night, which we try to get families involved to learn more about our Title program and just hopefully have some fun along the way. Mary Kay's report, she shared that the middle school math team, their practices Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. and I believe they're about halfway through their season. So far they've had a first, third, and fourth place finish, I believe, and kind of building off that Hour of Code opportunity, there were 160 middle school students who participated in that as well. Brian shared some information about the video production class at the high school, and they are now producing what they call Tiger TV Showcase, I believe with assistance from Alex and others at Studio One. And my understanding is that this is sort of a magazine type program. There's already some stories out on YouTube and whatnot where they are planned, written, filmed, and edited all by Dan Smith students. So pretty exciting stuff. And Brian also shared that Wayne Ivers has been chosen as this year's Minnesota Music Educator of the Year by the Minnesota Music Educators Association. So certainly congratulations to Wayne on that recognition and honor. Chad, in his report, shared that they had almost 70% participation at parent-teacher conferences earlier this month, and they are working on a positive behavior matrix that focuses on certainly everyday skills, but also skills that will be necessary for their students to be successful in their career or in the future. Bruce's report, he shared some information about the Thanksgiving hockey tournament that was held at the Red Baron Arena and Expo Center. Successful tournament, a lot of positive feedback, competitive games, and I think it's good for certainly our teams and others to face some different teams periodically. And then also Bruce shared that Rachel Schwartz and Grant Hoff as juniors are this year's MHS Excel representatives through the Minnesota State High School League, so they will advance to regional competition or consideration, if you will. Beth shared that the training at the New Teacher Center continues. I think they have days 5 and 6 either happening or will happen soon. That's going to focus on the observation process, which can be sort of a tense process for new staff. But one of the neat things that she's going to work on new staff with is to use our swivels, which is sort of an iPad on a swivel that follows you around while you're presenting so that staff can record, watch, and reflect on their own lesson, which is something that we've been trying to do more of, a little less stressful, hopefully some positive feedback with Beth and that teacher. And then Beth and Tiffany will be attending Introduction to Language-Focused Family Engagement. It's a workshop in January, a couple days, just really working on family engagement and how we can improve those efforts. Scott Vandermillen's report, he shared that 10 adult basic education students are taking the welding class at Maytech that started on November 5th. And he also shared something that I wasn't aware about. It's a rescue zone project where ABE is able to offer free computers to low-income families with the help of SWIFT, UCAP, Lyon County, Southwest Minnesota, ABE, a lot of partners, if you will, and support for this. And so far they've received over 35 applications for the computers. So a lot of good things going on, and I hope that you have or took the opportunity to read all of the reports.
Thank you, Scott. Dion.
Just touch on a couple of things. Marshall Public Schools United Way campaign wrapped up on Friday and actually updated. We did surpass our goal. We had really good participation in that. Second Chance Breakfast, I just put some notes in there. I had Lori Fruin take some snapshots of our Second Chance Breakfast, and we serve a little over 500 kids a day throughout the district, so that program has really taken off. And then our Tiger Wellness program started in November and runs through April, and they've done a really nice job. I put a snapshot of some of the things that they're offering all the employees throughout the district.
Thanks, Dion. Ms. Mohammed, would you like to run through your report?
Yeah, I can start.
Oh, yes, I will. There
I
you go.
also have Amran's report. If you can read that too. Yeah, I can start with the high school. So here's the Marshall High School, Middle School, and West Side report. Starting with Marshall High School, there were parent-teacher conference on December 3rd. 2018-2019 PTA meeting was on December 4th. Magical dinners started from Friday, December 7th and went through Saturday, December 8th. Pre-ACT testing for sophomores, and the actual ACT was on Saturday, December 8th. Boys hockey JV versus Redwood Valley was on December 13th on a Saturday. Girls hockey varsity versus Wasaka was on December 15th on a Saturday. Sterling Strings Orchestra concert was starting at 7 p.m. at SMSU. Early dismissal on noon. Release for Friday, December 21st. Full day on Wednesday the 19th. So no school December 24th all the way to January 2nd. Maytech conferences was on December 6th. No school on December 24th through January 2nd. West Side Elementary Orchestra convocation was done on December 21st. Okay, here's the middle school in Parkside by Amran. In January, there are tests coming up for middle schoolers, starting with the Ames WEP on January 7th and 8th, and that's for 5th graders and 6th graders and few selected 7th and 8th graders. STAR reading on January 10th and 11th for all grades, NWA Math and Reading for all grades on January 22nd and reading on January 28th. Parkside on Friday the 21st, there will be a school-wide winter party and there will be games and music. One game that was mentioned was ice skating. And their socks, there will be also a movie played, Norm of the North, and because there is a polar bear in it, the day is polar bear / pajama day theme. Classes have their own activities as well. After all these fun, students are coming back on January to take semester tests.
Thank you, very good. Any questions on any of those reports? Discussion items. This is our first reading of policy 601 to 606. Does anybody have any questions on those? If not, we'll move on to our action items. First action is to authorization to certify the 2018 pay 2019 levy.
So moved.
This didn't come up for me to make motions. What I did wrong. Thanks. Bill moved. I need a second.
Second.
Thanks. Any more discussion? We did discuss this at the last meeting in pretty big detail, so unless you have any further questions, this is to raise our levy by 0.15% for next year. I'll call for the vote. And that is approved. Our next item is approval of the 18-19 revised budget. Dion, do you have further comments on that? Or?
Just what was put out there. Not a lot of changes from the preliminary to the revised. One of the big ones was the change in capital outlay because we're doing the roofing project into one. We were able to shift that money into our LTFM fund balance, but otherwise it looks a little better. We're still deficit spending for the year, but nothing really else to comment about unless you have any questions.
When I did that backwards, I should have moved and seconded, so I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I will say too that the Finance Committee had a chance to look at this at a meeting last week, so you know that's sort of where people dive into the numbers, and Dion did a nice job of, I felt like, of sharing the more detailed information instead of the high level data and numbers.
Call for the vote. Approved. Our next action item is approval of budget parameters for next school year. I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
So we, every year as we get ready to work on the next year's budget, and we're already in the process of, I'll say continuing really work on the 2019-2020 budget that will lead up to an approval process or an agenda item in June of 2019. A big part of creating that budget is basically making sure that everybody's in agreement in terms of what I'm going to call variables or parameters, and I think there are 9 different parameters that we try to kind of work through and give a little explanation about and sort of talk about. Here's our process, our approach. In some cases, here are the numbers that we're going to use. So, you know, you look at student enrollment all the way on the left-hand side, all the way down to overall budget adjustment targets. For us or for Dion and our staff to build a budget, we really need to make sure, like I said, that you as a board are comfortable with what we've shared in the parameters. That's why it says draft on it. That's why we're asking you for your approval tonight. Probably the biggest variations, if you will, would be inflation. We're taking somewhere between 2.3 and 2.44% for an inflation rate. State foundation aid, we don't know what the formula allowance is going to be for 2019-20. We have information about a $1.54 billion state surplus. That's positive news as the legislators enter the session in January. We're, I think, taking a conservative approach and going to include a 2% increase in the preliminary budget numbers for next year. Hopefully it will be higher than that. As we've talked about before, I think it takes between 3 and maybe 4.5% to really balance your budget unless your enrollment goes up. So 2% is probably a minimum, and we'll certainly lobby and advocate for more. We go on and share additional information about TRA, LTFM, special education funding is a tough one, admittedly, just because the formulas are so complex, and we've changed to a new system just a few years ago, so we'll continue to be cautious in terms of that parameter. And then I guess the other thing is once we sort of have a preliminary understanding of what our decrease in the general fund budget will be for 2019-20. We're already to that point of where we feel like we're going to be looking at a deficit spending situation again in 2019-20. And then we'll have to have conversations at both the finance committee level and the board level about needs relative to student programming, just other needs that we've identified. You know, and really, are we going to try to increase fees, which that's minimal amount of opportunity to do that? Are we going to reduce expenses, or are we going to try to balance those out and perhaps use our fund balance to get through the 2019-20 school year? But we're a long ways away from having that information for you yet. So really what you've already motioned and second is to approve these parameters as presented, which then triggers Dion and others to start inputting this specific information. It's a little lengthy, I apologize.
Sounds good. I'll call for the vote. Those are approved. Next item is the approval of our school board goals, which is our advocacy goal. We discuss, don't laugh, that's hard to say. We did discuss that in our committee meeting. We decided to have the goal of the school board to just work on an advocacy, not only to the state, but to our community and everywhere. So you guys could kind of read what it said there.
The two goals that we had adopted were basically staff related. So ours, what we're looking at here is what can we as board members do to better advocate for our school district. And so the advocacy piece that was spelled out here by Scott is right on for what our needs are.
I should make a motion before we discuss that. So I'll make a motion.
A second.
Thanks, Bill. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. And that is approved. Approval of a resolution establishing combined polling places. I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? It's pretty self-explanatory. We're just putting the polls in one location. I'll call for the vote.
I think we've done that annually too for several years.
Yeah. We have to do it by the 31st every year, right?
Yep.
That is approved. Anything else? Once again, Karen, thank you for your service for the past 10 years. Appreciate everything you do.
Hopefully you'll miss me.
Yeah.
Adjourned. Thanks, everybody.